Hello and welcome back to another episode of OpenAirAtheist. I am James Theodore Steele III, and this is another response to Randomtheology, other known as Brother RC. Okay, I want to address, let me see. You claim that God's triunity is, or the Christian God's triunity is affirmed in the Old Testament. You cite a couple verses. I'm going to touch on two of those verses. Isaiah 44, verse 6. Actually, we will not be reading from a Protestant Bible, Baptist Bible, King James Bible, any kind of Christian Bible, but from the Jewish Tanakh, which is a new translation from Jewish people, Jewish scholars. Actually, if you read the cover of it, it pretty much says Jews and Christians. Okay, so I'm going to start here in verse 6, right where you want me to. Thus said the Lord, the King of Israel, their Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first and the last, and there is no God but me. Okay, there's no God but me. That doesn't affirm your position. If anything, that affirms the Jewish position. There's only one God, one person, no second persons in God. The other scripture you quote is from Psalms that I'm going to touch on, and in hermeneutics, it's good to first read, I think, who is this written to? So let's go ahead and read that. For the leader on Shoshanim of the Korhites, a maskil, a love song. We'll go ahead and read some of the context here before the verses 6 and 7. My heart is astir with gracious words. I speak my poem to a king. My tongue is the pen of an expert scribe. You are fairer than all men. Your speech is endowed with grace. Rightly has God given you an eternal blessing. Gird your sword upon your thigh, O hero, in your splendor and glory. In your glory win success. Ride on the cause of truth and meekness and right. And let your right hand lead you to awesome deeds. Your sorrow sharpened, your arrows sharpened, pierce the breast of king's enemies, of the king's enemies. Peoples fall at your feet. Your divine throne is everlasting. Your royal scepter is a scepter of equity. You love righteousness and hate wickedness. Rightly has God, your God, chosen to anoint you with oil of gladness over all your peers. He has peers. He has a God. No triunity. Sorry. You don't get it. I don't even know why you quoted or cited this verse to support your claim. Also, let me give you a little background on the Psalms from Jewish sources. You see, the Psalms were written, a lot of them by King David, for King David, about King David. And also, the Psalms were written to be read in the new temple that Solomon was supposed to build, which is King David's son, because King David had blood in his hands from, killing Bathsheba's husband, and therefore he was not allowed by God to build the temple. So King David wrote it to be read by someone else in the temple. Therefore, when Jesus cites from the psalm, he quotes, "The Lord said to my Lord." The first Lord translated there is Adonai, which is correctly translated Lord in uppercase because it refers to God. The second Lord is wrongly translated Lord because it is Adoni, which always is used in the Old Testament, as my understanding is correctly, to a man. So he was writing it because in a way that he knew that someone else would be reading about him. Okay? So obviously that can't be used with that information. Knowing that information, you can't use that verse in good conscience to support what Jesus was trying to use it for. None of that. How do you properly interpret the Old Testament without all of the information? For instance, there are some times when in the Old Testament the Protestants' Bibles will translate the word Torah, laws, or law, or commandments, or command. And actually it's Torahs. You see, there are two Torahs, and if you talk to a Orthodox Jewish rabbi, he will confirm this. There's a written Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, I believe, and there is a oral Torah. For instance, what is the use of the oral Torah? Well, for instance, how do you know what to circumcise when the Old Testament gives the command to circumcise? Is it the elbow of the child, of the male child? Is it the lip? Is it the ear? The oral Torah gives you that information. It tells you what to circumcise, the child's penis. Also, the oral Torah gives information on what is considered work on the Sabbath. What can a Jew do and not do on the Sabbath? When it says work in the Old Testament, when you read that, you should not work on the Sabbath. What does work mean? Does it mean you sit in the chair the whole day through the night and you don't move a muscle, don't expend any energy whatsoever? Or there are certain things that are considered to be work and certain things that aren't? Well, that is the information that comes from the oral law. And since Christians don't have access to this, they can't properly interpret the oral law. A good proof for the oral law is that the prophets themselves obeyed the oral law. For instance, how did Daniel, in the book of Daniel, why didn't he eat certain foods? That's recorded in the oral law. Why did they pray 3 times a day? That's written in the oral law. Jews are supposed to pray 3 times a day. But you don't have that information unless you look in the Talmud, or the oral law. So I can understand your ignorance of these verses because you don't have the background information that a Jewish scholar or just a well-learned Jew would have. I don't have all the information either. I'm still learning on the subject. But however, I thought I would share that piece of information with you. Also, I wanted to touch on, you mentioned in one of your other comments on the omniscience. Let me see. But he was not a mere human, for he was omniscient as God. You're referring to Christ in the flesh, and let me find that quote. First of all, you haven't addressed my problem that I laid upon you in a previous video with God's omniscience and omnipotence. The logical problem that I posed to you, you have failed to address that question that I posed. So I'd like to lay that on you one more time before this video ends, that you may address that so that I may touch on more of your statements in your comments on the subject of omniscience. So as soon as I find that here, I'll read it for you again. Let me see here. There's my notes. Can an omniscient God who knows the future find the omnipotence to change his future mind? See if you can answer that question, please, and thank you. Bye.